All right, everybody. Tim Adams here with you once again. I apologize that you're not seeing a live image of me, but I am in my car outside a Starbucks right now. It's just the way that the schedule worked out today, so I apologize for that. But we're going to dive right into talking about demystifying projection. Projection can be a really difficult topic, system to tackle because there's so many different components to it. And a lot of times, cost becomes the deciding factor that makes churches just kind of take the shortcut, take the low-priced road, and they end up with a projection system that just doesn't meet their needs. The image isn't bright enough, there's not enough contrast, there's too much ambient light, whatever the factor is. And we're going to really quickly go over the components in a projection system and a good number of the considerations you need to be thinking about when you are putting in, or when you're hopefully way before you're purchasing and when you're speccing. So we have Zach Delano here with us. So Zach, you want to say hello to the good folks watching?
Hey, what's up?
Excellent. So I'll be tossing some questions Zach's way, but for the most part, we're just going to dive right in. And the first thing I wanted to do is just you churches maybe that are, volunteers, techs that are working at smaller churches. Sometimes the big guys get it wrong too. And I'm going to share an image here. And what you're seeing is I went ahead and I downloaded this picture that's part of a cover story that they're doing, that they've run on a fairly large church that just redid their AV systems. And this is what they're considering a really good system. Now, what I noticed when I saw this picture immediately was that the words, the lyrics above the people's heads are completely skewed. They're squeezed, or they're stretched, I'm sorry. And so what you're having is you have a graphic, okay, or text that is being created at a specific aspect ratio, okay, so a certain height and width relationship. And what they're doing is they are stretching the width without stretching the height to match. And so that's what's causing this kind of stretching look that we're seeing. Now, this isn't a projected image. This is actually an LED screen that they just put in. They're really happy with. And we're not really going to be talking about LED screens, but the aspect ratio is definitely something that we're going to be discussing. And so I wanted to show you an image of what it looks like when it's wrong. So just be encouraged. Know that people do get it wrong from time to time. And I don't know the specifics as to why they're in a situation that requires them to do that. So take my critique with a grain of salt. But diving right in, obviously, if you're a projection system or projectors, multiple, and some of the top things that you need to be considering, obviously, is lumens. Okay, and that's the brightness. Okay, it's measured in what's called ANS lumens. Now, generally speaking, the higher, the brighter the image is going to be. There are other factors to that we're going to get into, but that is the measurement of the brightness. So just know that. Next up is contrast ratio, and you're going to see when you start shopping around for projectors, you're going to see wildly contrast. Some that are 800 to 1. You're going to see some that are 5,500 to 1. You're going to see some that are 18,000 to 1. And if you've ever shopped for flat panel televisions, you know exactly what I'm talking about because they have wildly varying contrast ratios as well. The thing you need to understand is these manufacturers, when they're measuring these contrast ratios, they are measuring the brightest that their image can produce, a bright, a pure white, to the blackest of blacks. And how they do that varies. And you got to understand that they're measuring these contrast ratios in as ideal a condition as they can. So that's going to be a pitch black room, okay, no ambient light. You're going to have, completely blacked out windows if they have windows at all. So you really got to take those measurements with a grain of salt. You really got to understand, okay, are they taking the brightness settings on the projector and cranking them way up, and then they're taking the contrast setting adjustment and cranking that way up, to increase the amount of difference, okay, between pure white and pure black. And the other thing that you got to understand is that a lot of projectors these days come with an auto iris feature, and that will adjust the iris based on the signal, okay, the image that's being projected, to increase that. If you're getting huge numbers of contrast ratio, you really got to question that, because you need to ask, how are they getting that? So just understand that that is not necessarily the only number that you need to know about. Next up is native resolution. Now this refers to what resolution the projector is able to best project, okay, and that can vary from 800 by 600, and we're talking pixel measurements here. So you can do SVGA, you can do XGA, you can do WXGA, you can do 1080p. There's a huge number of options available as far as resolution. What you need to decide is, what is the best resolution for me to project in? And a lot of that's going to be determined by what the computer's native resolution is on the video card. So projectors will be able to scale the image to a certainly high amount of quality. So if you have 68 and you want to pass a 1080p signal through it, it will likely be able to do that. However, it's not going to be able to do that in the same quality as a native 1080p projector would be able to. So just understand that native resolution is very important. What is your throw distance? Now this is a really big question, because when you get into medium-sized churches, you can see throw distance 100 feet. And longer, or they're further away from the screen you are, and the less light is, because the less is actually there are ways you can get around that with lensing, but you need to understand that interchangeable lens projectors are going to cost a lot more than projectors that have a built-in lens that you can't interchange. So you need to ask yourself, are aesthetics as important as or more important than being able to put the projectors when we need them in order to spend as little on the projector as possible. So, and then finally, aspect ratio, and this is the relationship between height and width. And going back to resolution of an aspect ratio. For example, for a long time we had a 4:3 aspect ratio on TVs, which is why they were mostly square. Okay, so what that looks like in pixels or resolution would be 640 by 480. Now, that was the standard resolution for standard definition television for many decades. Okay, computer resolutions, let's say 1024 by 768, that's also a 4:3 resolution. Why? Well, because CRT monitors were all mostly square to each other, 4 units to 3. Okay, that's the ratio. But when you go to, say, 1280 by HD, 9 widescreen aspect ratio. So understanding the relationship between aspect ratio and resolution is really going to go a long way for you to understand how to get the highest quality projection, so that rather than having pillar box images, which is black bars on the sides, or or bottom? Bottom. So I'm going to pause here, and let's ask Zach to kind of chime in. And Zach, what's your experience been with projection, and just do you have any stories that you can tell about bad projection or good projection? Just tell me what you think.
Yeah, I not too much experience installing projectors per se. We're actually getting ready in our church is doing an auditorium remodel, basically building a new auditorium, and we are in the process of actually ordering a projector right now. So this is rather timely, but yeah, we just ordered the screen, and basically our setup is just a I don't know if I think the screen is, oh, I totally forgot. It's like 100 108 inches, 130 inches. I don't remember, diagonal. Anyway, and then we're just gonna have a projector on the ceiling, and hoping to hear some good advice on what we're looking for as far as brightness goes. But for now, I think we're going for something around 6,000 lumens. So yeah, but yeah, definitely. We've ordered here at my house. We have a projector that we've set up occasionally, and so I've had some experience with that and ProPresenter and stuff. But yeah, not too much in the area of actually installed stuff. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, that is a pretty good segue into our next section, which is talking about the screen. Um, you know, but before we do that, let's talk about space. Okay, so while you got your mic off or turned on, let's big rough dimensions of the room.
Yes. They are. Oh, the. It's been so long since we've done dimensions. I think it's 60 feet across by, no, it's 100 feet across by, no, 70 feet across by 50 feet wide. So as you walk in, it's, sorry, that's not the right way to say it. So the depth of the room as you walk in all the way to the back of the stage is 60 feet, and it is 75 feet wide. Sorry, I think my audio cut out. I didn't quite hear
Oh,
you say.
okay. So it's roughly squarish. It's
Yes, yep. And about at the peak, it's 18 feet tall in the middle.
So are you going with?
Just one screen over to the right.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay. So what he's talking about is we're looking at deep environment, and they're going to put a screen over on the right side. Great. And they're looking at about 6,000 lumens. I'd say that's right. Maybe, well, no, that's where they need to be. Honestly, a lot of it depends on the screen that they've already got. So let's screen. The first is that a lot of people get this wrong because they look at how much these screens cost and they don't know anything about screen surface, which we'll get to in a minute, and viewing angles and that kind of thing, and they just end up getting the wrong screen because they're more worried about initial cost and fitting into a budget than they are about long-term investment. So the rough approximation, let's call it, of how you figure out what your diagonal size screen needs to be is to take the distance between the screen and the furthest viewer from the screen, and you cut it in half, and that should give you your diagonal. So he mentioned that he's looking at about a 130-inch diagonal, so that's a little over 10 feet. Okay, so that would indicate that a maximum viewing distance of 20 feet is probably where they need to be. Well, you can fudge that a little bit because the size screen, I mean, he's talking about, what do we say, a 50-ish foot distance between stage and the back wall. Well, that would indicate a 25-foot diagonal screen. I mean, that's huge. That's enormous. So, and that's not going to be cheap, right? So I would take that formula and, again, take it with a grain of salt. You got to wonder, are these formulas, or is that rule of thumb coming from, say, a theater standpoint, which would make sense because you need that size. But as far as doing lyric projection and sermon slides and that kind of thing, I think 130 inches is probably just right. I've got a church down in Las Vegas that, I've spec'd 164 inch, and they're looking at probably a 50-foot distance between screen and the furthest viewer. So Zach's church is not far off, and you increase the font size a couple times, and you're right where you need to be. As long as people can read it clearly and it's intelligible, then I don't foresee a problem. But talking about screen surface type, this is probably where we're going to spend most of our time because there are tons of options. You can get from matte white, you can get specialty high gain material, but the thing you got to know, you got to couple it with placement. Okay, so if your viewing audience is going to be straight on, and there's no variation in the angle from the furthest left and right viewer to the center viewer, then high gain is probably where you want. Let me give Daylight, who's a screen manufacturer, they have a high gain material. Okay, from 0 degrees, so right on axis, you're looking of 2.8-ish, which is huge. Okay, now I need to clarify something really quickly. When you're looking at screen gain, a lot of people misinterpret what that means. That doesn't mean that it's increasing the brightness of the projector. Okay, so it's 6,000 lumen projector. It's not increasing that by 2 times. It is making the image brighter. Okay, because but it can't reflect more light than it's taking in. Does that, hopefully that makes sense. A screen is passive. It's not active. It has no active light source of its own, like a TV, let's say. So it's not adding any light. What it is doing is it's being very efficient in reflecting the light that is hitting it. So from 0 degrees on axis, you're at gain 2.8. Okay, so it's approximately 2.8 times brighter from a perception standpoint to viewers at 0 degrees. You move just 10 degrees off axis, that gain goes down to 1.0. Okay, and you get 30 degrees off axis from center, you're looking at essentially a gray screen. That's how these things work. So the ideal, because a lot of these screens tend to be somewhat tilted away from the audience and not exactly on axis, the ideal is to find a material that's going to provide a very high degree of half angle, is what we call it, while still providing a brighter image than, say, a matte white. So if you're in the daylight world, as a manufacturer, you're going to be looking at, say, HD Progressive 1.3 as an option. That has a 70+ degree half angle. So if you're 70 degrees off axis, you're still getting as much brightness as the people that are, dead on 0 degrees from the screen. Angles, or rear projection, that is huge. Rear projection takes a fair amount of distance. Even if you have a short throw projector and a smaller screen, it takes a fair amount of distance. The advantages of rear projection is if you have the space in an installed situation, you can create a room behind the screen that will control the ambient light, and so you can get really bright images without the worries or concerns of aneurysm stout effect with front projection if you have full control over your ambient light. And we'll talk about ambient light in a minute. Finally, we're going to talk about placement. Where do you put your screens? 2 screens, one on each side, is pretty popular. Single screens in the center are also very popular. Sometimes you have screens in all 3 places, center, left, and right. There are some people that are experimenting with streaming out whatever's going to the projection screens out over the network, over the Wi-Fi, so people can see the same thing on their iPads, their tablets, their laptops, that kind of thing. Really quite sure that they are visible of the audience that needs to be able to see it, and that it's big enough that they can read what's on the screen. That's really the big thing about placement. And you can hang them on a wall, you can hang them from a ceiling, you can have them retract into a ceiling. I mean, there's tons of things that you can do. You can have them roll up instead of down, so you can have some kind of a custom enclosure that hides the screen when it's not in use. Really, whatever you want to do, you can do. So with that, those are the 2 major components of projection systems. We're going to talk about ambient lighting here real quick. Ambient lighting is just the lighting in the room. And my church in Vegas, they have an issue with ambient lighting because they have a light-colored carpet, and they have a lot of stage light, and so that light bounces off of the carpet and right up into the screens. And that causes quite a bit of washed out images because it's not something they can control. Replacing carpet is not exactly cheap. They could go with a darker carpet, and that would take care of that. There are screen materials that reject ambient light fairly well, but they tend to be also in that same vein of high gain screens, so they have very low half angles for viewing. And in this particular situation for my church in Vegas, it's just not going to be a good solution for them. So we're going to overpower that ambient light by putting in higher lumen projectors to just kind of, like I said, overpower it and drown it out. Similar to a sound system at a arena, they have it so loud because they need to overpower the acoustics of the space. So they control the sound. And thus you have to take earplugs with you to enjoy a concert. So we're also going to talk about presentation software, and that's our final piece here. So are you using PowerPoint on a PC? Are you using Keynote on a Mac? Are you using Easy Worship? Are you using ProPresenter? Depending on what software you're using will depend on how much functionality and capability you have to control the images on the screen. Easy Worship and ProPresenter are easily 2 of the industry standards. There is another one out there that I can't think of right now. And I don't know, Zach, can you think of the other one that I'm missing?
Is it OpenLP?
Oh, Easy Worship, ProPresenter. It's okay.
Did you hear what I said? Sorry, was my mic off?
No, OpenLP. I heard you.
Okay, cool.
No, I actually not heard of OpenLP. So there you go. There's another potential solution for you. But anyway, just understand the software that you're using and what it can do for you, and just figure it out. Hit up resources like Church Tech, Adventist Church Tech, Tech Applied, and Church Mag. read the industry publications, reach out to an AV system integrator, reach out to a consultant like myself. You know, the resources are out there to help you. And you know, I know that this has not been the most comprehensive of overviews, but hopefully it's given you some information that you can take, and it will help you determine a better system. You know, what is it that you need? Get the answers to the questions that you have right now. Hopefully this has at least brought up some questions for you. And, you know, email me. I'm in the Church Tech community on Google+. You can reach me at timatoproductions.com, TIMATO productions.com. You know, hit up people like Zach, hit up Paul Allen Clifford, Jeremy Smith, Chip Dizard, you know, whoever it is that you feel most comfortable with. Please don't try and do this alone if you don't know what you're doing. Because remember, and this will be my final thought, and then Zach, I'll have you give your final thought. Good stewardship is not about how much money you save. It's about how much money you don't waste. And there's a huge difference between those two concepts. So Zach, what would you like to leave people with?
Yeah, kind of that same idea. A lot of people, I do see people either with kind of they go overboard on the side of not wanting to quote unquote waste money, but in the end they either end up wasting money by, you know, doing something that they'll have to redo later or something like that. And also I see a fair amount of people that they'll have a system that's been in their church for, you know, the past, you know, 10 or 20 years or whatever, and not necessarily having the leadership or even just the gumption to try to figure out how to update their systems, and making it really difficult for people that try to come in and use the setup that they have. So yeah, there's a balance to strike there, but yeah, those are my thoughts.
Excellent. Well, Zach, I appreciate you making the time to participate today. I know it's
Absolutely.
kind of an odd time, but that's just how it worked out for my schedule today. And since I'm the host, I guess I get to dictate that. But you know, it's always available on replay for everybody. I'll put it up in the link to it up in the group. So yeah, until next week. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.